welcome back for another episode of Talks with the Elders with me, your host, Tam Dillon. So we're chatting about the feminine rising this quarter. And for this episode, we're going to be branching into what the feminine rising looks like across generations, and how our understanding of the feminine has evolved over time. While the feminine rising is often discussed as a more modern day movement, there's a lot of talk about it at the moment. Many conversations happening today are part of a much longer story. Each generation has experienced different expectations, different opportunities, challenges, and relationships with things like power, leadership, spirituality, self-expression. And by looking across generations, we can better understand what's changed and what remains the same, and what wisdom can help guide us forward as a global collective. So joining me today is Brandy Leadborn, a healing arts professional with more than 3 decades of experience. Brandy holds a master's degree in metaphysical science and counseling and has taught yoga and meditation for over 25 years. She's an intuitive guide, certified theta healing practitioner, systematic family constellation facilitator, and retreat curator. Brandy's work focuses on helping healing arts professionals reclaim their inner authority so they can lead and serve with clarity, integrity, and sustainability. Brandy is all the way up in my alley. This is why Brandy's joining me for today. With a lifetime of experience working across both conventional and healing spaces, Brandy brings a unique perspective to how these shifts have unfolded over time. Brandy, a huge, huge welcome. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today. I know you've got a lot of insights to bring for this one.
Thanks, Tam. I so appreciate the invitation. I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's hop straight into our first talking point, and let's start with how ideas around the feminine have changed across generations. Let's start with that.
So I'd like to look at it mostly through the lens of family constellation, because I really think it offers a unique perspective to speak of it in that way. And for those who are not familiar with family constellation, systemic family constellation, what we want to look at in the ancestral roles and responsibilities is it's something that is just inherent in all of us, that we want to belong. We have a specific order we like to follow. There's this giving and receiving that happens in our family system. And so, in particular, when it comes to, you were talking about gender roles across generations, right? So, this is really just about beliefs. And it's about how there are often adaptive responses to the historical conditions. So when you think about things like war, migration, economic unrest, and these kinds of things that happened way in our past, and in fact, sometimes we still carried some of that with us. It's very interesting how we do that, right? But our
Yes.
grandmothers may have embodied endurance and sacrifice and emotional containment. I have a personal experience around that one. And then mothers may have carried things like caregiving and like economic burden if the father went off to war, the husband went off to war. Also, younger generations inherited greater freedom, but also they may have some fragmentation and some pressure or loss of orientation. So, my personal experience around that is very interesting. So, my husband is a third generation Jewish survivor from the Holocaust, right? So, his grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. She was in concentration camps. And this idea of emotional containment was very huge in his family because they didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about being in the Holocaust. They didn't talk about the sacrifice. She lost her parents and never saw them again. They were separated and never saw them again. And then that condition was also passed on to his mother, who also has a very strong, like, emotional containment, trying to get her to talk about her emotions. Very challenging. She lives with us now, by the way, and we're caring for her in our home. And I really love learning about historically what has happened in people's past because of the family constellation connection, right? But that's one of like a personal experience I like to share. because it's changing so much now, you know, and every generation really develops gender roles in relationship to survival, right? So what looks oppressive from one generation may also have been an act of loyalty or protection or necessity in another, you know? So
Mm.
that's all of the conditions that allow us to survive. We have to adapt. It's not like, oh, it's just a belief I have, and those carry on from generation to generation. I think just now we're all learning these wonderful healing modalities where we can shift that and shift the tide to start really connecting with identity and like who we really are, who we want to be. And that's more about that in your questions to come. But I mean, there's so much more flexibility now than there was before in terms of gender roles. But that's just one perspective I have on that one.
That's such a great insight. You know, when we're looking at why are humans the way they are now? And, you know, obviously, history will give us an indication of that. But when we look at the family constellation side of it and the generational stuff, that brings in just this whole different lens to the conversation, which I think is great. I think it's a really phenomenal lens to be looking at this through because it's you know, as children we'll watch our parents and we kind of learn from our parents, but there's also the stuff that's encoded as well. You know, it's in the DNA, it's in the passed down, it's in the unsaid things, the unactionable things, you know, where it's I'm like this, but I don't know why. I've got this, but I don't know why. I feel the need to perform like this in my relationship, but I don't know why. I feel the need for my spouse to be a certain way. I don't know why. So the family constellation stuff really shines a light onto the why. Why are we operating in this manner? So let's chat about previous generations and what those generations can teach us about things like resilience, leadership, and community as well. You know, you touched on endurance a moment ago, so I think that let's bring endurance into the conversation as well.
Endurance is huge. I mean, if you're here, if you're present, you're here because of a long line of people who had to endure and have stamina. I
Hmm.
really think that this is maybe one of the losses that we've experienced is the lack of stamina in, energy, heart, um, just all out patience, right? I mean,
Hmm.
well, that could have something to do with how our technology and our advances are like giving us, immediate gratification because you definitely
Yes.
had to wait a while, back in the day for what it was you wanted or needed. And now, even information, education,
Mm.
it plays a huge part then in what we're experiencing today in terms of endurance and stamina. I feel like that's the thing that has dwindled over time is
Mm.
that ability to have more sustainable connection to ourselves and to other people. So I hope that's what you were speaking to.
Yeah, and I actually want to leverage off that, and let's go a little bit more into the community side because that speaks to that disconnect within community. And something I hear so often is, where is my people? Where's my community? Where's my connection? And if you go back into, in fact, if you go into any indigenous culture today, they absolutely have beautiful community. Ancient indigenous cultures, we had community. It's how we functioned. You know, the good old saying, it takes a village, and it does. It takes a village not just to raise a child, but to be a person, to be a functioning human being in any day and age. It takes a village. You know, we're not islands floating around in isolation. And I think I look at the modern family dynamic where you just have this kind of atomic family unit of, you know, mom, dad, and the kids, and it's hard. Life is very hard here, and we're all struggling. And like you say, we've lost that level of resilience and endurance that our predecessors would have had. So we have become soft, and we've lost the village aspect. So we've lost a lot of our functioning.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly because, when you're thinking about survival and that's your goal, where, and I know we talk a lot about, I heard you talk about chakras on this program, because I like, that's, we know this stuff, but survival is like first and second chakra energy. If we can't stabilize that first and second chakra, we can't go to the emotional, we can't go to the heart, we can't go to the willpower. Like all of that has to be contingent upon us feeling safe and secure in our bodies and in our world. And if we don't have that, like, you can't even go to the next step. And you're right,
Mm.
community plays a huge role in that stability and that security, that connection to others in the tribe. Feeling more isolated like we do now is a huge, I think, decline from when we had our community and we had our tribe and we felt safe. And it's a basic human need, so
Mm.
I think you're right on track with that one. Community and our tribe, like, this, hugely important in being able to take that next evolutionary step to wherever it is we're going to go.
Mm. And it's, I mean, it fascinates me because I can connect to anybody anywhere in the world right now. So the capacity to have community is there, but we're also probably the most disconnected that we've ever been in human history, which also just absolutely flabbergasts me. And I think that also doesn't help with the isolation and, building resilience and endurance, where it's such a difficult skill to build on your own. When you have people, because sometimes you do need someone to step in and say, hey, I've got you. Let me carry that for a little bit. Or you need to do that for someone. So instead of being able to functionally build that stuff for yourself, most of the time you're just breaking and you're functioning in survival mode. And now we have things like disease in the body because you can't function in survival mode all the time. And living in isolation also perpetuates the survival mode cycle that we're just stuck in. What are your thoughts on how we could build healthier communities, utilizing things like the digital age and the different tools that we have at our disposal?
Yeah, that's perfect, because that's exactly what I was thinking as you were saying that. Today, what we can do and what we're doing, even in other groups, Tam, you and I are a member of one Enlightened Entrepreneurs group on Facebook. Brandy Peters, who has that platform, she is amazing. And she has just helped us really explode in connecting with each other. And so my wheelhouse is creating retreats, and one idea that's popped up in my head for sure is, we have a community here. Why don't we all connect? Let's meet somewhere. Let's physically connect. And we are connecting in these groups in the digital playground, where I support too, but collaborations. You and I have also already talked about collaborations. Connecting to people you would not have normally come to connect with through
Hmm.
like-minded, or not like-minded, but similar things that we enjoy, right? So not just business, but what
Hmm.
else can we connect on? So using the Facebook and the social media things to connect with our people, with our tribe, we can take it to the next level. So I'm creating a community, you've created communities. Bringing those communities together, even in the real world, I think will help with that isolation. It will help even give people something to look forward to as we continue to help each other up. Like you said, supporting,
Hmm.
having someone support you and you support someone else. We can't know that unless we're talking,
Yes.
unless we're
Yes.
connecting some kind of way. So I agree, like this idea of being able to connect with anyone, anywhere, anytime is wonderful. How do we take it to the next level? I say it's about connecting with that community and then meeting in person. Let's
Hmm.
go do some work together in a common area, common place where, and 'cause there's so many, and I'll tell you, there's so many amazing spaces around the world. I know there's some in New Zealand. There's definitely some here in the US where people can meet up and say, hey, let's connect there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll put a shout out to Brandy Peters because she really has created an amazing thing with Enlightened Entrepreneurs. In fact, I'll drop a link to the Enlightened Entrepreneurs group here for Brandy,
Perfect.
because I mean she's just done amazing things for creating community. And I had a conversation with Chad Peterson. I don't know if you're, yeah, Chad
In
from your business
Ecuador.
group.
Yeah.
And we were chatting about the collaboration thing and a bit about community. And he said, what about reciprocity being a better word for collaboration? I was like, oh yeah, and that feels really good. And the reciprocal conversation has come up in a couple of other episodes that we've been recording since then. As opposed to collaboration, because the way he explained it, with collaboration, sure, you're working with someone, but there's still some kind of an imbalance that you're going to get. But with reciprocity, it's that thing of give and take. And the way he explained it is that you're giving and taking to a point where it's so natural that you don't know if you're giving or taking. You're just doing and being. So it's bringing all of these people together and in person, yeah, the human connection, like connections like this. I love my coffee chats, I love my virtual coffee chats, but like there's nothing like sitting across from a person in their energy and being reciprocal with one another, to having reciprocal events. And it doesn't always, like you say, have to be business. Let's bring the modalities together and have a healing session for everybody. As those who work in the healing arts, we're always like, I'm going to work for everybody else. Maybe I'll give myself a bubble bath once a year. It's like, cool. We're going to get together and treat one another.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And so, you mentioned the reciprocity, giving and receiving. Another very important concept in systemic family constellation is the giving and receiving. And it's like that for everyone. And Chad was right. What he learned is correct. And what we learn in our relationships with our partner in family constellation is you want to keep giving a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So that there's this slight imbalance. And every time, like my partner, my husband, like he'll give me some flowers. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Here, I'm going to buy you a t-shirt and something else. So it's that one up. It's this cute little competition that you play with each other, but it is playful and it is fun. And I do with that with my friends too. I'll leave a little gift on my friend's doorstep from time to time, and she loves it. And sometimes I don't say, it was me, or put a tag on it, and she'll put a message of it. Who gave me the da 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 da? It's so much fun. It's so much fun. So on that note, the other note about meeting together in person, you hit the nail on the head when you said sit across from each other and feel each other's energy in a physical sense. Touch is such an important part of healing ourselves and someone else. So it's the touch, it's the hug, it's the physical hand holding, or the physical just connection with the physical body that is extremely healing. And in
Mm.
isolation, we don't have this. And so it's so important to connect with others in the physical so that we can like our body really does adjust that resonance that we talk about, right? And when we get close to someone, we feel them, we physically feel them. There's something really magical about that when we get close to someone that we really admire and respect and trust. So to your point, 100%, it's that physical connection that is so tingly.
It is, and that is more of the, we're going to we can use the word feminine or we can use the word yin. It is a far more yin based action to have that physical connection with someone, to physically show affection for another person, to have that level of touch. I mean, obviously, yang comes in to do the action, but yin's what's driving the intention behind it. So, we're now developing community connection that has more of a yin foundation to us. When you're sitting across from someone virtually, you can only do so much interaction, and you can kind of like, shove a whole lot of yin energy at them and be like, I think I'm loving you right now, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It's like being held by a mother,
Yes.
being held by anyone sitting on the matriarchal side. It's that same sense of feeling, being held, supported, loved. And I think that those are things that help build our endurance and resilience because you're to your point earlier with the chakras, we feel safe, we feel supported, we feel held. So now we can actually rise up into, having that solar plexus opening, moving into the heart space, feeling safe to speak. Now you're just layering chakras on top of one another, and all we're doing is just, let me give you a hug. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And there's a lot of research that has shown that babies, when they don't have that,
Mm.
when they come out of the womb, they struggle a lot.
Mm.
Struggle with their survival, they struggle with addiction, they struggle with just basic human interaction. And so
Mm.
the importance of that really becomes us showing others who have had that, showing others and helping others, witnessing others experience that for themselves in a way that supports their healing. So, yeah, absolutely. 100% is so important. So important.
Mm. Let's deviate a little and let's look at the up and in fact let's stick with the babies and let's chat about the opportunities and the challenges that are facing the younger generations.
So some of the challenges that I would say are facing it goes back to what we were talking about before about isolation in our technological age. I find that it's now more than ever. So I have a mother-in-law who we're caring for. She has dementia, and I have an 8-year-old daughter. And so I'm sandwiched, I'm like the Gen X mom, who really wants to care for everybody in this lineage. But what I find, especially like with my daughter, I'll use her as an example. I have two boys too in between her, so they're older kids, so they're more in the Gen Z category. But she does love her technology. And while it can be very isolating because they are so immersed, they get so immersed in what they're learning and how they're learning because information is like so fast.
Mm.
And it's happening so quickly and it stimulates those parts of the brain that really want to get that those dopamine boost,
Dopamine.
right? Yeah,
Mm.
the dopamine boost. So redirecting, I think, is our challenge: is to redirect these younger generation, particularly females. Now, I'm not saying male. The feminine, masculine shows up in males and females both, right? We know this. Um, Her in particular, they call it the alpha generation, right? Gen Alpha.
I believe so.
Oh my goodness, like this is appropriate. But redirecting them to connect with the earth, to
Mm.
ground, to be acquainted with, and to understand how nature works and how we're a part of nature is so important.
Mm.
And then the earth energy, I know we say, it's a mother because she's constantly creating. There's also a stillness in her,
Mm.
and I think coming back to that balance is what we really want to work towards. I love technology. I really like what's going on with AI to some extent because it is helping us be more efficient and it is helping us to realize things that we would not have connected with otherwise.
Mm.
We must use it wisely, right?
Yes.
And so redirection is, I think, our key to the younger generation connection to nature and connection to other humans, back to community again,
Mm.
and bringing them back into the fold of the community, not maybe with family, but to our broader community of what makes you happy, what group of people can you connect with that makes you feel at home
Mm.
and that makes you feel alive and that pushes your limitations. So all these wonderful things that go along with human connection, I feel like it's our responsibility to just redirect them.
Mm. Absolutely. Um, and there is it's all in how you use the tool. tool, and technology is very much just a tool to be used. And are we going to make it all encompassing and do everything? And that is our source of connection, or do we utilize it as one form of a way to connect with people? Because these younger generations, being so immersed, they lose that sense of socializing. How to be a functioning person outside of the technological world. And I mean, even as an adult, I'm like, why is it so hard to make friends? How did I do this when I was two? How do we just need giant sand pits? Is that the answer? Like, maybe we all need to go out and stick our hands in the dirt and touch the earth. Maybe that's how we'll make more friends. But I see less of that socializing going on in the younger generations because there is that immersion with the technology. So it's, it gives them huge opportunities that you and I wouldn't have had when we were their age, but it also brings up those huge challenges as well. And again, that source of disconnection. So I love that redirecting, go put your hands on the earth, go feel the big giant mother's love here, and this is how you're going to think about the type of people that you like. Who do you want to be when you're older, and what type of people do you want to associate with when you're older, and how can you develop those relationships now and build the foundations? I think that's really beautiful, and I think that's a really great tool for a lot of the parents in this day and age to bring into their family dynamics. What about spirituality? So let's chat about how spirituality, healing, and personal development have evolved over time. That we're all in our wheelhouse now.
Yeah, yeah. Now we're in our wheelhouse. I love this. This is a great question. So, I think what I love about spirituality in this aspect is we, if I look at it again through the family constellation lens just a little bit, when we look at, sorry about that, alarms. When I look at um what kinds of questions we were asking back then, and it was about where do I belong? How do I fit in? And it's like that now too, but it takes a little bit different life. It takes on a different life in that, like, who can I be now, right? Instead of who can I be now? And then in spirituality, it's not, before it was about family, and then it came, and then it did migrate to groups a little bit. It is in some respect. And now we understand that we can channel ETs. We can channel a galactic council if we want to. So it's almost like our expansion, our spirituality and our expansion has gotten so wide and so big. And I think it's going to continue to grow if we can keep our stability and our connection to feel secure within ourselves, no matter what's going on around us. We can continue to evolve to that space where we can be anything, we can do anything that our minds will allow us, our spirit will allow us. And that's our own limitation, right? So in terms of that, the sky's the limit, really. And I think it's really important to recognize that where we came from was our stepping stones, right? And to acknowledge that even back then, like, the feminine wasn't really absent, but it was often just compressed into different forms of that were acceptable to the system. So our system is now so expanded that we can express our feminism in so many different ways. Again, the sky is the limit. In terms of our spirituality, it can go anywhere from here.
Absolutely. And I think that having the ability for global connection again, because I mean, you and I are in two different states right now, but we're having this conversation. We could pull someone in from Australia if we like, so we can speak to people across different cultures, and across different indigenous cultures, and we can learn about, what does your spirituality look like? So, the sky's now expanded its limits to everybody across the globe sharing that information. And that's why people now know about the Galactic Council, for example. We understand ancestral worship and lineage a whole lot better because we've come from those different cultures. So I think learning across different cultures is a really beautiful thing as well, because that also just expands the spiritual aspect. I mean, spirituality, I believe, is since the dawn of humanity, we've had some kind of a spiritual component to us. There's always been some kind of ritual or ceremony, storytelling, drumming, dancing. These are all old, ancient things, but our understanding of what we can do with it has grown so much, and how much more we can connect with it has grown so much. So I think there again, utilizing the tools we have to our advantage on the global scale, but combining it and learn and have a willingness to learn from one another,
Yes.
where it's not okay, well, my lineage is better than yours, or mine's more accurate than yours. It just opens up new opportunities for potential.
Yeah.
That cross-cultural learning, I think, is hugely important. um, what about the balance between honoring things like tradition and embracing change? We're chatting a bit about spiritual heritage, chatting about different ancestral lines and lineages. Where do we find that balance between honoring tradition, but moving forward with change at the same time?
Yeah, that is our biggest kind of like challenge to bring in both and find the balance between honoring those that came before us and what they sacrificed, what they had to endure, and then bringing that into, so how can I express that now? What can I do maybe differently and maybe the same? And I guess a lot of times I'll speak about um, weighted, weighted, not tradition, but like weighted legacy.
Mm.
Like someone, like we will decide or choose to grab something from our ancestor that was really heavy, and being able to let that go and still receive the gifts, the ancestral gifts that they gave us, is completely within our choosing. Like we get to choose. We don't know that at first, but once we acknowledge it and recognize that, then we're able to pivot and move towards what we like, how we prefer, or be creative and come up with something completely different that we would our ancestors could not even imagine.
Mm.
But the only way to do that is to acknowledge where we've come from and acknowledge what they've been through. And and also there's this element of acknowledging their place, their order, and this is where I think the feminine rising in business actually comes into play, because we recognize that those that came before us, especially mother who birthed us, who created us. So we are the created in that sense, and mother would be the creator. Mother and father, of course, specifically women, because we are the incubators. We are the ones who birth, right? The thing. And then as a creator myself, I do have children, but we also can create a business. We can create something that is impactful for the world. When we do that, we must remember that being the creator of that new thing that we've birthed forth, we must stay bigger. We must stay bigger than what we've created. And so in saying that, we have not have to, but we can choose to step into this lineage of creator, created, and new creation. So, and being that, I'm also the creator of what I've birthed. And in birthing a business, I say a business because we're in the spiritual business, like this is what we've decided to create, I think, as women and of people coming into the feminine rising movement. This is what we've decided that is going to push us forward and push the whole feminine energy into the next millennia, is the spiritual nature of business. So the container is the business, and the spiritual act being a healing arts practitioner, being, tarot, yoga, all these amazing modalities that the world is going to embrace. Like it has in some degree, right? To some extent. And it's just going to permeate the culture, the entire world culture. That is the next evolutionary step for us, because that is where the direction that I really feel is going to propel us into this next stage of evolution.
Mm, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've always been intrinsically spiritual, and I think we kind of went a little bit wonky when we brought in the organized dogmatic religion, which is pretty much used for colonization, control, all those wonderful things. And that's where all of that is incredibly heavy on the yang. It's incredibly masculine energy, and that's where we've seen a lot of suppression of the feminine aspect. Spirituality is innately feminine in nature. Your healing practitioners, hugely in their feminine, whether they're and gender here doesn't matter at all. I know multiple different practitioners, and the ones that sit very firmly in who they are deeply feminine, deeply in their yin, because that's where healing comes from. That's where creation comes from. And spiritual work is very creative work. That container that you're talking about is no different to a womb, incubating different things, bringing things to fruition. Um, so I think that the move from where we are and where we're shifting into spirituality, you're going to see that huge surge. I mean, we obviously had a huge surge of it in the 1960s. I don't think it was a particularly healthy version of spirituality. It was very, very capitalized and commercialized. But where we're moving to now, we're becoming more genuine about it. We're becoming more real about it. And we're coming from more of that feminine aspect. The 1960s spirituality was masculine. That was yang heavy. That's, I'm gonna sell you this and you're gonna buy it. Whereas this is creating that container, creating that incubator, like come step into my womb office and let me rebirth you. Let me rebirth you anew. Let's create something new for you. So I think that that's a really beautiful way to look at how that shift could move all of us forward. And it is, I mean, people are heavily moving away from organized religion into spirituality. More people have curiosity around things like tarot and yoga, and what are these practices? I want to have my astrological chart read. Your concentration of people that think it's woo or it's nonsense or work of the devil, that group is shrinking very quickly, as the rest of the world is starting to tip a little bit more into this actually feels more correct. This feels more comfortable. This has some warmth and nurturing to it. Um, and what are your thoughts on what's being gained, and what's been lost through social change? I mean, we can look at the spiritual lens. I'd love to hear from about the family constellation lens on this one as well.
Well, I really think that some of the gains we can talk about is more we get more of the voice, like we hear more and we say more, for sure. More agency, more education. I would say there's more emotional honesty.
Ooh,
Because
yes.
when you were just talking about the religions and people kind of turning away, I think they're seeing the truth and what that was really created for, constructed
Mm,
for, and it was about more of a means of control than it was freedom. So
mm,
we're definitely getting more what we're gaining is more freedom for our exploration, our spiritual exploration. I feel like that is one of the most important things, in addition to um, the truth. So the truth seeking part, like, yes, truth, individual truth, but also the truth that's been suppressed for many,
mm,
many years because of that toxic patriarchal control, and
mm,
and it's not again back to the ancestral need for survival, because back then if you had a structure, and it was very helpful to have that structure, So when we look back, it doesn't benefit us to go, oh, that was horrible. It was necessary for the time. And as we move into this different way of connecting with ourselves, we can be grateful for that. Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here, you know? So
Mm.
paying homage and just honoring it, just honoring what was and moving forward into, okay, now what's possible? Got it. Thank you. Now, here we go. What's new? You know? Um, and then some of the losses, I would say this hits home for me is the clear rites of passage. So this is
Mm.
something that's happening that I'm not too happy about. I have a son, he's 18 years old. He's about to go graduate high school. He's going to go to college, the higher education, leaving the nest, you know. There's no I was looking for a male retreat, a rite of passage retreat for him that he can go and be with other males and connect with the earth and connect. They exist, they're out there. So hopefully I can find something that will be good. I feel like I will. There are people out there doing it. They have the clear rite of passage. There's a mountain climbing or being with other men who also have elders there that can teach him and talk to him about what it's like to be a man in this world right now. It's very important. And I feel like that's fell away because of our separation and isolation, and we're not as collective in our communities like we were. So that's one thing we're losing, I feel. Also, interdependence,
Mm.
um, not really we're losing the interdependence because with the isolation and the things we've already discussed, people are choosing less connection because it's scary or they might get hurt. And what I teach a lot of is look, spoiler alert, it's gonna hurt, right? Like, spoiler alert, you love, you're gonna hurt. That's the way it is. Here's what makes it less painful: your community and your people, your tribe, there to witness what you're experiencing. Garbo Mate, I think, is the one who talks about what was traumatic was not what happened to you when you were a child. What was traumatic was you had to do it alone, right?
Mm.
That
Mm-hmm.
parents weren't there to support you and be connected with you as you have this experience. We can do that now. Like, as healing arts professionals, we know how to do that with our clients. We know how to witness them and hold space with them. And we know how to allow them to have their journey and passage through this rebirth you were just talking about. So for that, not liking the loss of interdependence, but we're bringing it back for sure. And then this reverence for caregiving. Oh man, as a caregiver myself, for someone who has lived most of her life, I have to tell you, it's so humbling to be able to be that caregiver for someone who is towards the end of their journey and really just wants to live the rest of their life in peace and without suffering. So, the suffering part, we're all going to have something. We're going to all have some pain. We're all going to have a little suffering. But the witnessing is I really think that thing that's going to save us all.
You've touched on some really juicy points here. I'm gonna hop onto a couple of them.
Yeah.
Let's do the rite of passage first because yes, actually a discussion I had with my mentor last week was about rite of passage. And she was sharing an interview that she was listening to on the radio. And they were talking, the guy that was being interviewed, he's written a book about how when he was younger, he went on a rite of passage and essentially went off into the middle of nowhere and built a whole house. Like that is what he did. Um, he was taught how to do it. He was given all the tools and the skills and the know-how, and then it's like, okay, go and do the thing.
Right.
Um, so for masculine and feminine rites of passage, it is something we've innately lost, unless you're being raised inside an indigenous culture that still carries that through their lineage. In the Western world, it's something that's very lost. for the feminine, I mean, menstrual cycle starting, that's a rite of passage. Birth, that's a rite of passage.
Yes.
Menopause, that's definitely a rite of passage.
Yes.
And the society looks at those things as gross. We don't want to know about that. Keep your tampons to yourself. Birth, I don't want to be in that room, and that looks like an awful experience. And menopause, who wants that? Who wants to deal with that? But it's a rite of passage. It's something that we earn through the different passages of life in the feminine aspect. Um, if you look in indigenous cultures, a woman gave birth, and that was painted on the walls as a ceremony was done for it. A woman moved into menopause, ceremony. For boys as well, moving into becoming a man, there's that rite of passage. We're gonna take you off and teach you some skills and tools, and how you can do life better. And I think that speaks in the way that society is now showing up. And the interdependence. Yes, yes. I think the world has become very fiercely independent, and hence we now feel very isolated. I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. And now with the surgence of AI, it's like, well, I can do this with my AI. I don't need anybody now. And I'm like, man, yes, you can, but
Doesn't
you
mean
know,
you should.
yeah, that exactly, because you lose the human aspect to it. And as business owners, when we think about entrepreneurs, it's like this solo individual that's, you're doing everything, and like you can't. That's how you burn out. That's how you struggle to get your brand out there, because you know what you do, and you're phenomenal at what you do, but maybe you stink at marketing. Maybe you're like, what the hell is social media? I don't know how to design a book cover. So this is why we need interdependence. We need to have relational skills with one another, and also to trust one another as well. The trust factor, to your point that you mentioned just now of, I'm scared to build these relationships and be interdependent, because what if someone hurts me? What if someone steals my idea? What if someone steals my money, and I pay for the whatever service, and they just run off? So there's this huge element of trust that's formed inside humanity, that we don't trust one another.
Exactly.
And it's obviously, I mean, I'm sure there's a whole bunch in family constellation that probably pops up into that. There's a lot of our history that pops up into that.
Yes.
Where, I mean, we've gone to war with one another. Like, why would we trust one another? Like, oh, you come from this country? I don't know. I don't know the ones you doing my marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like your
And
people
it's
killed me. Like,
and
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, having the exact same experience, all going through the same fears. And it's like we all just sat down around the table and had a conversation. It's like, man, I'm terrified to handle my marketing. Really, me too. And the person at the end of the table says, hey, I do marketing, but you know what? I'm scared to, have you do reflexology on my feet. And it's like, well, let's get to know one another.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Connection and relatability, like how we relate to one another, I think is one thing that can build trust. So that touches on this other thing about integrity and self-integrity, right? And being able to do what we say we're going to do and follow through and have these boundaries that we are able to. I say boundaries, that's such a, we know what that is, but that's kind of like one of those words that we're like, well, if I set a boundary, can I still let this in or let that in? And the truth is that's our other challenge, is
Mm,
knowing and understanding that we can have love and have peace and still maintain our boundaries. I just said that to my client like a couple of days ago. Like that's where we are. We're in this place of we can still be what we want to be and have these safeguards. Like it's okay to say no to this
mm,
person or that thing that we don't want, even though we like this person, even though, we have this thing that and to ourselves. It's like to your point of what you just said about, well, we can do those things, but doesn't necessarily mean we should. That's how we burn ourselves out. having that be something that's constantly looming, and how do we take care of ourselves to that point, like that's about self-integrity,
Mm,
giving ourselves what we need first, filling our cup before we can fill someone else's. And not always. So as a mom who stays extremely busy, who always has a lot going on, I don't always put myself first, but I don't always put myself last either. So I've learned to find this common ground of, so what's my priority right now? And learn how to manage priorities, learn how to, again, that safe container we were talking about, to be able to have the freedom that I want and need. This container has to be there for myself and for others. But that's how we build trust. All
mm,
that to say, this is how we build trust. So we build trust within ourselves and we build trust with others, because guess what? They're watching. Like, they're watching and they're listening, and we are stepping into our intuitive age.
mm,
So many of us have acknowledged our intuitive abilities now, and more will come and more will realize, yeah, actually that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't feel right. And so we can spot inauthenticity a mile away. We're to that point where many of us can just listen to what somebody's saying and hear the change of the voice. The inflection is different. Something in the face wasn't quite right. And so when we pick up on that, we shouldn't run away. We should say, what what are you really feeling about that? Like, what just happened there? Because when we start calling things out and saying this doesn't feel quite right, give the other person an opportunity to
mm,
express, explain, feel what they're going to feel. I mean, the antitrust, is really about us not trusting ourselves. So the more we can connect with others, that's that through that connection again, that I really feel we'll be able to say, tell me more about that. I'm really curious about why you said this, but then this happened. Can you tell me some more about, what happened there? Like, it's so important to do that, because when people think that you're gonna give them a chance to actually explain, sometimes, I mean, they really show up, you know?
mm,
They really do show up regardless of what kind of personality they have. Another bit about me, I co-parented with someone that had narcissistic personality disorder. That's 18 years of connecting with a person constantly who, sometimes I was getting attacked. Sometimes there was dishonesty. Sometimes there was, gaslighting, all that stuff that happens when a person is feeling very insecure, and they're feeling, sometimes and it's connecting with that feeling. That's so important, not taking offense to what other people are going to say or do. those that's about my own insecurity. That's about my own, not lack of integrity. So looking at that and being compassionate is that's really where it's at, to your question about the mistrust, the antitrust.
mm.
I've been saying antitrust for a while, and that and anti-guru, like trust anti-guru. And my friend was like, "That sounds so negative." I'm like, "Oh, okay. What should we say instead?" She's like, "Well, empowerment and all these power words like trust and authenticity." I'm like, "Okay, those are fun words." But I think everybody knows what we're saying when we say the other thing too. So it's a balance, right?
Mm. Softness with boundaries is a term that I've come across recently. Um, and it comes back to the thing of disconnected from communities. If we were raised in with a more community-based mindset, we probably would have more trust with one another and more trust with the self. And I think about in a lot of the African cultures, they if someone messes up in the community, they gather as a community and they hold that person and they're like, let's understand you. What led you to this? and how can we help you through this?
Yeah.
Instead of shoving them to one side and being like, hey, well, you really messed up, so we don't want to know you, and like ostracizing them,
Yeah.
which there is a lot of that happens in the modern day age. And in African cultures, South Africa specifically, you have a term Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. So we are who we are because of our environment. So if we are mistrusting, our environment is mistrusting, we don't trust our environment. So it's
Yeah.
again, we're coming into reciprocity, right? It's in reciprocity to what's going on around us and what's going on within us. So the trust factor comes in on a couple of different layers of how we got here. The disconnect from community, not being held when you do mess up. Maybe you don't have integrity because you don't know what integrity is. You don't know how to cultivate that. It's not a innate skill that we're just born. Babies don't have integrity. They're babies. We learn integrity. So we're coming in and around the place that we grew up in. We've never seen integrity before. So we're the sum total of our environment. So I think there's some really beautiful things to learn from the African side of things. I am because we are. This conversation exists because you and I are who we are. That's taken the direction it has because of that. And going back to being more supportive inside community spaces. If someone drops a horrible post and you're like, wow, let's chat about that. Where did that come from? What made you think along those lines? Instead of being like, oh my God, here's this person, kick them out, like block them. Um, giving people that fair chance. And it's softness with boundaries. Having those guardrails in place, but compassion, and unconditional love, where I'm going to have care and compassion for someone, and there's no conditions. There's no conditions here. There's boundaries that will keep everybody safe, but inside of that, again, the container comes back into the equation. Um, so with the feminine rising, how are you seeing it show up across different age groups? And inside family constellation, how is that popping up in that sphere?
That's a good one. I love referring back to experiential things because it's real. It's like this is what's being shown, of what we're seeing. Um, there was a constellation that I did a few weeks ago at a retreat, and this really interesting thing happened inside of the constellation where the person representing a father figure in the constellation was holding steady, like really holding the space for the daughter that was breaking down. And and it went on for quite some time. But at, but what amazed me was that this was the steadfastness of the father to just be there and to hold the container, basically. I mean, as a facilitator, that's usually my job, right? But what I was seeing right before my eyes was this father, representative of father, holding the space for the daughter. And I have to tell you, that was pretty profound for me to watch. And eventually, daughter came around because father didn't go anywhere. He was still. And that is the highest, I feel like that is the highest expression of masculinity. And it's a balance, right? So I know you asked about the feminine rising. And I really feel like in order for this daughter, this feminine representative to come to her own healing, the masculine representative was holding the container. So seeing that, and I'm not saying that I haven't seen it before, like I have in other situations, but this particular one really made an impact on me because it really showed me like how dedicated that both energies are in this time. So it creates, it's like this balance, right? If the masculine is willing to sit with and be the container for, be present with whatever needs to happen for that feminine energy to rise. It was like a microcosm of what's really happening in our world. Then the healing that's taking place is, I mean, it has this ripple effect across the world, across the universe. Like it feels so much bigger than just this conversation we're having right now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is how I'm seeing it show up in real time as people are going through their healing process. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. It gives me a lot of hope and it gives me a lot of optimism about what's coming next. Because, some of my friends are really worried about, and they're scared about the economy and what's happening. There's going to be a shortage and this and that. And I tend to be optimistic anyway. But, and what I'm seeing, I feel like it's really proof to me that things are going to ripple out in a way that is going to be for the best for humanity. This is what I really feel is the essence of the divine feminine or the feminine rising is this is what's going to be what's best for the future generation. And so even though it doesn't always look like we wanted to, it doesn't always look like we thought it was going to look now, right? It's really, I think the idea that we are turning things around is is it's true. Sorry, I can't get the words out sometimes. But yes, like there is proof, and in my eyes, there is proof that the trajectory that we're on is going to lead to a much happy, I think I could say happier, but a more peaceful existence.
Mm.
Is that your feel
Yes.
too, Sam?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's not blissful utopia because I mean humans are still humans. We're still going to have the human experiences, but it is a vast majority attaining versions of inner peace because I think coming back into the community aspect and reconnecting as global community where we're feeling safe, we're feeling supported, and we're getting what we need on the survival, your basic hierarchy of needs, those are being met. So we can start to step up into those other needs and into the higher chakras as well, coming back to that conversation. So it's the balance is definitely a factor. We're talking about the feminine rising, stepping more into yin based consciousness. And it's because the world has been very yang heavy, it has been very masculine heavy. I mean, something is too much, it becomes toxic and unwell. So when you kind of tip the scales back up and you have the rebalancing, so it's not women are going to take over and we're now going to run the show. I mean, give us a chance and see what we can do. It can surprise you, but that's not what it is, and it really is. It's about restoring balance within each individual, and when you restore that balance, you're going to have a level of inner peace. And with that does come a level of happiness, and it's I think understanding the difference between um, hedonistic happiness and authentic happiness. Your hedonistic is I'm going to eat this chocolate and I'm going to be happy about it. But then the chocolate's gone, I'm not going to be happy anymore. So it's like quick fix happiness. Whereas when we're maintaining equilibrium within ourselves and within communities and on a global level, you have more of an authentic happiness. And that's why I say it's not blissful utopia, but there is a more thing of like inner peace, you know,
Yes,
full
absolutely.
of full of whole humans.
Yes,
Mm,
absolutely. It's that balance that's going to create, I think, what more of what we want.
mm,
And I agree 100%. But like I really feel like we can recover that mature masculine and feminine expression without the rigid hierarchy. Like we
mm.
don't need that anymore. And more people are coming to that conclusion, I think. And I think it's going to continue, especially with more and more of us healing arts professionals out here, helping people realize that and bring that more into consciousness. So yeah,
Mm.
I agree. It's the balance. It's not women are going to take over. It's women are going to show you the way.
Mm. Yes. I think people have the misconception, that matriarchy looks the same as patriarchy. Patriarchy is this, matriarchy is this. We're all egalitarian. We're all on that same level. It's equilibrium balance. As we start to close off, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what wisdom could we carry into the future, and any closing thoughts that you might have on today's topic.
Well, I guess it's just a little synopsis of some of the things that we talked about today about community, bringing people together through community. Those are my values for my business, by the way, community, connection, and compassion. And I think that compassion element is also something we just talked about trust and being the container. That's about compassion, 100%. It takes compassion, it takes stamina, and it takes wisdom. It takes that
Mm,
wisdom to hold all of that, to hold all of what's new, and to pay homage and honor where we've been and where we've come from. The community part is essential. Moving into this next phase, finding our tribes, bringing tribes together. I mean, look at how much smaller the world is now that we have this technology and the communities that we're growing. Yeah, I mean, they need to be bigger than, and they will be bigger than the leadership that we've allowed to run the countries and run the world, right? We're all, a lot of us are very aware of what's happening and how it's happening, and the way to thwart all of that is through connection, community, and compassion, I believe. So supporting each other, and then supporting the others, supporting those who don't know what's happening, don't know what's going on. That's our key. I really feel like that's our key moving forward. So I love what you're doing, Tam. Like, you're doing it, I'm doing it. We're creating these amazing spaces and communities for people. So many other people are doing it. I feel like
mm.
how they say, stand on the shoulders of giants. Like, there have been so many people who have paved the way for us to do what we're doing, and we're leaving our legacy for those that come after us. So, in terms of systemic family constellation, I feel like we're doing this global constellation, and we're propelling ourselves forward into the next millennia to join the collective consciousness of the universe and the multiverse, because we know there's more. There's going to continue to be more inside. That's my closing wisdom. Like, we're just going to do what we know is what's in our hearts to do, and it's going to be amazing.
I love the note that you're closing it off on, and I 100% agree. I actually have goosebumps listening to you in that last little stretch there. It's like, yes, yeah, community connection and compassion. You don't need anything else much past that. If you have those, you're hitting in all the chakra points. You're hitting in all the needs right there. Safety, security, love, nurturing, tenderness. Like, everything is in those three words. And I think that the rising feminine is hinged on that connection, community, and compassion. So let's leave it on that incredible note, because I mean, I'm sure we could probably chat for the next 10 hours, because I know you well enough, and I know me well enough. And I think that is a perfect note to end this episode on. Um, these conversations remind us that meaningful change is what happens inside communities. This doesn't happen inside isolation. We can sit and think about these things on our own and be like, oh, that's a cool thought. What do I do with this? But when the community's having the
Yeah.
discussion, we're like, yeah, that's an amazing thought. What can we do about it? Let's action that. So it's moving out of isolation, utilizing the tools we have to our advantage to help with that. And not forgetting about that in-person connection. Take your online communities offline, put your phone down, and interact with the person across from you. Have that sense of touch, because that's how we express compassion. It's how we express our humanness. And each generation really builds upon the experience of the previous generation. So we're here to teach. 7 generations behind us. That's what we're leaving the legacy for. Brandy, a huge, huge, huge thank you for your sharing, your wisdom, your conversation, and you're one of my favorite people to chat to. So I love that I got to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Tim.
Um, Thank you
Same.
to everyone. Yeah, thank you. And to everyone joining for this conversation. If you're gonna take anything away, the 3 C's. I think we're gonna bottle this. We're gonna bottle it and we're gonna give it away for free.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. That's fantastic. I love it. Thank you, Tam.
Thank you. All right, so I'll be back next month with another episode. Until then, strive for that connection, that community, and that compassion.